name is Jamie. I live in Saudi Arabia and I have a makeup collection that just keeps getting larger. Some things happened today, but we're going to talk about that another time. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to discuss with you kind of flirting with a theme of monochromatic. Today what we're going to be talking about is purple. Purple is one of my favorite colors to work with for sure. And the reason being is that I feel that in the same way that green can be kind of disguised as a neutral, I also believe that purple can be disguised as a neutral, which you can use in a way to incorporate into your day-to-day routine if you're feeling a little bit sassy and you're feeling a little bit bold. As I mentioned in the last video, you don't have to go as hard as I went today. This is just for fun. Also, my entire channel is just for fun. These are my opinions. You don't have to take anything too seriously. And if you hate it, move on. Let's all move on with our lives, okay? Today what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to go over a couple of eyeshadow palettes that I think suit this criteria and you could potentially be picking up for maybe a discounted price right now. It just depends. I'll have to take a look on the old interwebs and make sure that some of these are available, but I went through and I'm pretty sure they're all available. So let's get into it. The majority of them are indie palettes. I do have one mainstream palette in this list, but forgive me, okay? The first palette that I'm going to talk about is from Colourpop. It is the Or Kid You Not palette, and if you were here the last time, this saucy shade Seedling straight fell out of the pan, which I thought was quite rude. And this is, again, kind of a monochromatic palette. I am not that wildly excited about it. The quality is fine, but just in terms of like how I would compare it to other palettes, it's not exactly my favorite, but it is available and it is affordable. At last I checked, it was available. They brought it back because it is well rated. The quality is really nice, so take that for what you will. It's not my favorite palette per se, but it's fine. Kind of similarly, this is the Melt She's in Parties palette, and man, yeah, I've had a problem with breaking palettes. This shade arrived broken. Actually, Melt was very nice, and they replaced one palette that arrived broken, and then this one also arrived broken. So, just so you know, Melt has kind of some finicky palettes, but I will say that I do like this palette. It is rather pretty. I don't use it very much. If you enjoy this kind of mulberry color and these kind of lighter purples, this is a good option. Melt's a great brand. This particular palette rated very well. It's just not my particular cup of tea in a party. It's not my particular cup of tea party or something, whatever. I don't know. There's a joke there. It was bad, sorry. But that said, it's a nice palette. Moving on, this isn't like strictly a monochromatic palette, but I feel like I should include it because it is very nice quality. This is the Midnight palette from Beauty Bay. So this is the 16 pan palette, and there is a 42 pan palette available. Personally, I do not need that much shadow. I just don't. But I will say that these two rows are incredible to work with. Just let me give you a taste of this pastel. Look at that. Look at that. That is delightful. Okay? We love that for us. Likewise, we love Beauty Bay shimmers. Let's get into this shade. Is called Gleam. And this is such an interesting lavendery, like, really beautiful shimmer shade. I love this shade. It's not swatching the best, but Beauty Bay makes a gorgeous, 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 gorgeous shimmer. And yeah, I have used this palette recently and really, really enjoyed it. This is another one. And this is Electric. So if you wanted to experiment with some color, and I should mention too that you can always use purple with a brown, just to kind of tone it down a little bit. Like I said, you don't have to just go in hard and blend it out with a bright pink or blend it out with a lavender. You can kind of put a little bit of purple down and just blend it out softly with a nice brown, and it'll kind of disguise it a little bit. These two previous palettes, Or Kid You Not and She's in Parties, very, very much that way. They're a bit more leaning on the berry side than really a like deep royal purple. So that to me is a bit more neutral leaning. You know, as goes using color, that's a bit more on the neutral scale. Just casually dirty handing it everywhere. This next one definitely toes that line as well, where I feel that it is very work appropriate. To me, this palette is a little dull. I psyched myself up so hard to buy this and I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be everything I ever wanted. It's not, it's really not, but it is really pretty. It's a beautiful quality. And if you are kind of new to color, if you're a beginner, this is a good direction to go in. This is the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette. This is the mainstream palette that I mentioned before. And I mean, let's dip into Empowered. Look at that, look at that, that's very pretty. And there's a lot of different like beautiful shimmer shades to work with where you could construct a really nice look. Oh my God, that is really pretty. That swatched better than the Beauty Bay. I mean, it should, it was expensive, okay? That is the thing about it, it is a bit cost prohibitive, but like I said, if you are just putting your toe in to color and you want to experiment and you haven't picked up this palette yet, she's nice. She's a nice option. Like I said, of the two, I really prefer my Mercury in Retrograde palette, but like I said, Mercury Retrograde is a bit scary for people. So just be aware of that. All right, next up, got my hands. I gotta wash my hands really fast. Okay. Next up is a palette I picked up recently, and this is Vintage Glam from Gloss Gods. Again, there's kind of a very neutral leaning row that I think would be very work appropriate, and then we have our more fun purple row, and then kind of a pinky row that you can utilize to do whatever you want. You can stick to the rows, or you can definitely mix back and forth. And this is a really beautiful palette as well. I wasn't that in love with it at first, but I also kind of didn't read the directions of how to use the glitter glue. So turns out you might need to do that and you might have a better time. So let me just recommend you do that. But let's look at Oh the Stories, this shade here. This is so pretty. Look at that. Look at that. Oh. Okay, are you ready? I will swatch it on my stupid arm. I'm very bad at swatching. Do you see that? Ugh. 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 God. That is so freaking pretty. I love that. That's gorgeous. It hurts my eyes almost. Like I'm looking deep at it and I'm like, ow. So yeah, this is a really beautiful lavender purple. It's just so pretty. Ugh. And then I will say that I like the matte formula from Gloss Gods, so I don't think there's anything to stop you from picking up this palette if you're interested in it. And let me swatch Vintage Hero, just because I can. This is kind of a darker purple. I'm so bad at swatching and I'm sorry. There we go. I mean, not as impressive as that shade, but still, it's very pretty. Oh, I have another kind of mainstream palette that's also very, very obviously. Lastly, I have the ABH Norvina Volume 5 palette. This is a chunk of change. This is the only palette I've ever received for free in exchange for a review, not directly from ABH, okay? So calm down. But I will say, I do love this palette and I wore it today, and this is kind of the impetus for the video. And I mean, it's a lot of purple. It's a lot of purple. It's a lot of shadows. I love this palette though. I'm really happy and very pleased to have it in my collection, and the mattes are super good to work with. I mean, they are a bit fallouty, but that's ABH. We already know this. Like, there's no reason to cluck about it. It's facts is facts, you know? And I mean, let's look at C1. I also like how they did that. They don't like make up weird names to bedevil me. So there's C1. Yeah, man. The palette is old too. This is technically past its shelf life date. I wear it on my eyes, it's fine. Not officially recommending you do that, but if you do, I didn't tell you to, okay? I'm gonna go into D3, swatch that too. I mean, there's endless uses for this palette. Kind of a dark, yeah, there's 2 neutral rows, there's kind of some pinks in there thrown around, but overall it's very purple and it's very versatile, and I wore this to work today and it was gorgeous and I loved it and it was easy to use. That's the thing, the ease of, the ease of use with this palette is just 10 out of 10. I still love this palette. I love this palette, I really do. And if you want it, go buy it. Look at my arm, it's crazy. Okay, this is a bonus. Bonus. And I think this is going to kind of lead into my next video, which is to say that I'm gonna start talking about different color stories that I find very, very enjoyable. And this is one of those. This is the Flora Story palette from Odin's Eye, and guess what? It's a green and purple palette. So let's talk about the purples. I wore this the other day, very recently, and this shade Magnolia Crawford. If you know, you know. So I'll swatcheroo that. Oh, very nice. Very, very, very nice. Can you see that in this house, we love of a purple shimmer? We really, really do. This is a great palette. This kind of, oh my gosh, this orchid shade, it just sounds beautiful, you know? And it is a beautiful color. Let me swatch it. With a very dirty finger. Do you see that? Come on now. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So if you wanted to combine my 2 favorite colors in one color story, this is an excellent, excellent direction to go in, if I didn't mention it already. I like the palette. I've used it recently. I used it more than once. Like, I've definitely used it more than twice now. So the quality's there. I recommend all of these palettes based on quality, color, pigment, all that stuff. Best deal on a purple palette if you're just wanting to get into it is probably the Beauty Bay palette, although this does look a little bit imposing just given that the color story is both blue and purple. So if you're not interested in the blue, you may be a little bit fish out of water with that. So if that's the case, you can also get into the Or Kid You Not palette. The other palettes are a bit of an investment, with the exception, obviously, of the Flora Story palette. This is a pretty reasonably priced palette. I think it's like $33 or something. But the other 4, I have She's in Parties, Vintage Glam, and Rose Quartz, and Norvina Volume 5. All of those are a little expensive, but the quality is all there. And then also, like I said, I'm gonna be getting into different palettes with different color stories that I really enjoy. This look was not made with any of these palettes, I will say, but we'll get into that later. Let me know if you want to see me use any of these palettes and give you a taste of what I think. Again, I'm sure I've used them all, but if there's anything you want to see, just let me know. If there's anything you want me to talk about, want my opinion on, just let me know. We can talk about it. Anywho, thanks for watching this quick little video, and I'll see you next time.